I just saw Black Adam. I don't want to give you a breakdown, full spoiler review of the film, but we really need to talk about what impact I see this movie having on the DCEU. This film and the discussions and narratives about it have massive implications for the future of DC films. But before we get into the finer details about the movie, the big question I think on most people's minds is, were the critics right? You are probably aware that currently the reviews for Black Adam are pretty stinking bad, which has led some people to believe that there's some kind of a conspiracy or an agenda, or maybe even just a slant against what The Rock is trying to do with Black Adam. So were they right? Let's talk about it. And my honest answer for you here is, oh, hell no, fam. These critics were not right. These critics were wrong. People are crapping on this movie left and right. I mean, honestly, if you just looked at the reviews, you would be kind of assuming that every character in the film is a cardboard cutout with absolutely no depth, and they all just move their mouths around to further the plot until you get into the actually smashy scenes. If you listen to the critics, you would think there's no depth to this movie at all, and certainly no depth to its main character. You would be led to believe that there's no real backstory explained for the entirety of the world, no logic that pulls all of the themes and elements of the film together, that there's no character progression, that there's no meaningful ending, that it's all just smashy smash, punch lightning. And I'm very happy to report that that's not the case at all. This was legitimately a very enjoyable film. It's not perfect, right? Definitely not a perfect movie, and I don't think it touches the upper echelon of great comic book movies, but I think it sits at the high mid tier. I think it's just as good and enjoyable as a lot of MCU movies, particularly movies in Phase 4. I would much rather watch Black Adam again than watch the Black Widow movie, and I'm actually a Black Widow movie defender. And you know, another thing that the critics said a lot was that this movie just bites off other comic book films. It just replicates a lot of the favorite and fan favorite scenes from these different comic book films, and although there are various moments in the movie and even elements like the JSA kind of being like the X-Men that do have a remarkable amount in common with other comic book movies, I felt while watching the film that it was put together in such a way that actually made it feel unique. There's this kind of narrative out there that there's nothing unique about this movie, that it's just going to feel like every other comic book movie to its detriment. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think there's something unique going on with Black Adam. I think there were moments where I personally thought as a fan, oh, they're going to go this way. And they didn't. They went a different way with it in various different scenes. It's really cool in that regard. I actually feel like this filmmaker, Joame Colette Serra, actually did their vision. Like, this actually feels like a movie that has its own unique tone. It's doing interesting things. So I totally reject the idea being put out there that just because certain scenes in this movie mirror other great comic book scenes, that it feels formulaic. It felt like a breath of fresh air in many ways, especially as compared to a lot of MCU Phase 4 properties. So I think the critics are wrong, and I hope that a lot of people go check out Black Adam for themselves. All right, but now I want to talk about what I love about this movie. Let's talk about the things that I personally think are the most incredible, and it starts with the JSA. Again, a lot of critics would like have you believe that all of these characters in the JSA are just no personality, like no depth whatsoever, just kind of comic book parody type characters that just say badass things to each other until the action starts, and I wholeheartedly reject that idea. I feel like Aldous Hodge killed it in this film. He has a very interesting kind of, I'm a leader, I'm a tough guy, but I also have a soft side. Like, it was really compelling. I think that he does a lot while also striking this really stoic, badass Hawkman comic book vibe. I like the idea of him being somewhat of the leader of the JSA, having the big freaking mansion, having the crazy nth metal ship, and all this different technology. It was really freaking cool. Dr. Fate is absolutely a standout in the film. The scenes where Pierce Brosnan is not being Dr. Fate are awesome, and he brings this really interesting, old, wise, yet swaggerish kind of energy to the character. But then when he becomes Dr. Fate, oh man, it's all kinds of badass. The spells were incredible. The voice he uses were awesome. The way they utilize his powers in the film, I thought were really brilliant. And the whole thing about him seeing the future and seeing the death of his friend from the jump was really compelling. It turns into something interesting in the third act. So I think there's a lot going on between those two characters, and I really liked it. But on top of that, the other members are cool as well. Cyclone's powers are freaking awesome. She is a joy on screen, very charismatic in her own right. And then Atom Smasher was really cool, just kind of a chill dude I think we could all root for. I love the scene with his uncle. I absolutely love the thing that was going on romantically between him and Cyclone. It's really cool, man. Like, straight up love the JSA, found them to be very interesting. And the best parts of the movie are when the JSA is fighting Black Adam. I also loved the action sequences with Black Adam, especially when he first becomes unimprisoned. Wow, that scene is absolutely incredible. You've seen parts of it at like the Comic-Con trailer, footage in the trailers and things like that, but just actually experiencing it in the film was unbelievable. It's kind of scary, like it's legitimately scary. And the action in the film is on freaking point, dude. Like, they go for it. Like, a lot of Black Adam scenes are absolutely incredibly done when he takes out that whole army in slow-mo. Even though I don't love the music change-ups that they did in some parts of the movie, the look of what was going on was absolutely incredible and really well thought out and choreographed. And it's violent as hell. Like, there's reports out there that they had to take some stuff out or they were going to get an R rating, and you can absolutely feel that. Like, there's some stuff in this movie that I can imagine a more brutal version of that would literally just kind of get people's jaws to drop. Like, Black Adam doesn't give a shit, and he's very powerful with the way that he uses his strength, his lightning, and just tears through regular human beings. It was something to behold. I found the mythology and the sort of wider DC universe totally alive and doing well in this movie. I think DC actually does their best when they're just like, boom, here's DC and everything's established. And I know that, you know, if you're following the other DCE movies, it might shock you that there is a Justice Society, that they have contact with Amanda Waller because the groups of heroes coming together for the Justice League was such a big deal. I understand that, but we don't technically know when this movie takes place in all of that. And I, again, just really think DC does better when it's like, DC exists, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all these people just exist, and the JSA just exists, and that was cool. And the way that Black Adam was using Shazam, the way they utilized the wizards, that sort of myth, the nth metal, Dr. Fate, all these DC things feel on point, even if they're slightly different than what we get in the comic books. It felt like a living, breathing DC world. Okay, but now I should talk about what I did not love about this movie. And really, it starts off kind of shaky. There's a massive info drop that is literally followed up by another massive info drop, and I could just feel that kind of attention span, even for me, someone that was really excited at this point to see this movie, kind of waning. I was like, that's like real crazy. Like, that's a lot of lore, backstory, and info dropping all at the beginning of the movie. That was a major complaint for me. If they would have tightened that up a little bit, I think it would have been much better. The other thing that really didn't work for me that I didn't love was Sabak. Now, Sabak in his own right is okay as a villain, and he is presented very powerfully and intimidatingly, and it's cool, man. The scenes in hell were dope. Way cooler than they had any right to be. I was like, damn, like, this movie's really going for it there, and it looks amazing. But unfortunately, the design for Sabak isn't the best. Like, its CGI is a little bit wonky, and it's really noticeable when he's fighting Black Adam, unfortunately. When he's fighting Dr. Fate, you get lost a little bit in Dr. Fate's cool, ridiculous powers, and the same goes for Hawkman, because at one point, Hawkman sort of uses the Dr. Fate helmet anyways to kind of do Dr. Fate attacks anyways, and it's really cool, and it disguises kind of how bad Sabak looks. When Black Adam fights him, unfortunately, it's kind of on full display. Definitely not as cool as it could have been, but it ends in an amazing death where Black Adam literally rips him in half. That shit was dope. So overall, a mixed bag for sure, but worlds better than a lot of critics are making it out to be, and I think it's a really enjoyable movie. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10 right away. That could drop or go higher depending on how I feel the next time I watch Black Adam, and I really did enjoy it, so it's like a 8 out of 10 that I'd highly recommend. It was legitimately fun, and I think you'd have a good time seeing it with your buddies, with your family, or whatever. Okay, but now let's get into the impact that this movie is going to have on the wider DCEU as far as I see it.
Number one, always listen to the audience. Let them inform you. They will always inform you on where you need to go. So it's the same thing where the ultimate goal was not only deliver Black Adam, but also deliver the JSA, 5 new superhero characters in one movie. But then also, man, let's stretch this universe out. I grew up a DC boy. Superman, I love Superman. I loved Superman, and I still do. I was also listening to the fans at the same time, where you have Black Adam. We will create Black Adam for him to be the most powerful and unstoppable force on this planet. The most powerful and unstoppable force in the entire universe has been on the sidelines for too long.
Now let's talk about the post-credit scene. Let's talk about the DCEU, man, because the lingering sort of stink over this movie, and I think a lot of the frustration with fans is the Superman post-credit scene, what's going on with DC in general, because Henry Cavill showing up was amazing. He looks incredible in the new suit, and it is a new suit. Looks really good, and he even has the curly Q, dude. The old school curly Q for Superman. He looked incredible, but it feels very different than the Superman we leave in the Justice League, right? And so I think a lot of people are kind of confused about this, maybe even people not liking the idea of abandoning Zack Snyder stuff and going for this version of Superman. I actually like it a lot. I understand where some fans' complaints are. And the other thing that's weird about this movie is its kind of whimsical logic in its connections to the wider DCEU, Justice Society having been there. Why are they working with Amanda Waller? Why is Superman working with Amanda Waller? Like, that doesn't make any freaking sense. So it's weird in that regard. And I definitely think there are better ways to do this. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about the idea of Ben Affleck, Batman, getting in touch with Black Adam instead of Amanda Waller with that little drone hologram thing. What if it was literally Batfleck having that conversation with him and then Superman comes down? That's a whole different thing, because then it's the Justice League saying, Black Adam, you better stay your ass in conduct. And the harsh reality is, when it comes to DC and when it comes to this movie, that there's been a lot of mess ups and the leadership has let people down. The whole Snyder Cut movement, however you personally feel about it, has absolutely divided that fan base, and a lot of things are being going wrong for DC films. So I don't know if this is the movie that's going to save DC or not. It's tracking pretty poorly. When I went in to see it, barely anybody in the theater. It's possible that word of mouth will be really good for it. Maybe it'll have a really good weekend and a really good second weekend and then go on to have legs, and DC could say, wow, this is really freaking cool. But I also kind of don't blame DC fans for all the weirdness that's been going on and the way that that company has treated fans, where they're being very skeptical of this film and they're just going to wait to check it out on streaming. I don't really know what the solution is for somebody like Rock, who obviously put a ton into this movie. Like, I could feel the passion, man. Like, I could feel the passion in this movie. And again, pulling that deal off behind the scenes to get Henry Cavill is absolutely incredible. But it's just kind of up to the market at this point. Like, what are the fans going to say? Are the fans going to embrace this? Because in a lot of ways, it does feel like Snyder Light. I don't know. I'm really curious, but I'll tell you this. Going into the movie, I was like kind of thinking, okay, well, if it's like a 6 out of 10 and it's something that's like really not that good, it's just going to be a disaster for DC, and they probably will consider this a failure. But I think it's a legitimately cool movie, man. Like, Pierce Brosnan was dope. Aldous Hodges was dope. The JSA, super cool. Loved it, man. So I'm actually hopeful now, like pretty damn hopeful, that Black Adam finds its audience, that it makes some money, because I'd love to see more of this. I really would. And one last thing I want to say about The Rock, because I know a lot of people are complaining in the reviews that, like, he doesn't have charisma, right? Like, that he's not charismatic in this movie, that they've stripped all of that away, and he's like very soft-spoken and almost like a fish out of water, like almost kind of dumb, right? I reject that completely. I actually think that Rock did a lot of work to feel more like Black Adam. It's different than a lot of the performances that he has had in the past. It is really stoic. and the way in which he speaks and the sort of mannerisms and everything, there's not a lot there. There's a lot of like mystery, sort of Kuleshov effect. You got to kind of read into it to see how he's thinking or how he's feeling. He does get attached to the family of the lady that ends up freeing him from prison. And I think he does embrace becoming a hero for Kahndaq. And I really want to give him a lot of credit, man, because I think it was a legitimately cool performance as a version of Black Adam, and one that I ended up really enjoying and I want to see more of. So that's my thoughts on Black Adam and the DCEU overall. I think the jury is still out. We'll revisit this after this weekend's box office to see how the movie does, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Thought it was dope. Smash a like on this video if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about Black Adam if you've seen it in the comment section below. If you want to watch more, why not check out the video I just dropped today about Thunderbolts and Captain America New World Order. A lot of crazy Red Hulk stuff in there.